Hi, Teacher Think here. Today we're going to talk about parent conferences. Could be in two parts, could be in three parts. I don't want to make these too long. But it's just some thoughts on how to have a good, productive conversation with a teacher, and that makes it worthwhile for everybody. Because everybody's really there to help the child, and hopefully everybody knows that. First question is really when you're going to have a conference, and I mean, is this a conference that's been scheduled by the school because it's conference day and everybody's going to come in? And if so, then you go in, and neither of you might really have an agenda, and the teacher might just tell you pretty much what's going on and isn't he nice and all that kind of stuff, and which is good. And then they might talk about little ways to get ahead. In that case, unless you have something on your mind, then you can listen, you say what you want, and really just try to say, what can we do to support the school? How can we help you? And that's important because it sets the teacher's mind at ease that you're going to be a supportive parent. And really, the best thing you can do is to support the school in order to support your child, because the school is going to have a certain way of doing things, and the teacher is not going to be in complete control of how things go during the course of the year. And if you're all working towards that, then things will go smoothly with the child. It's really important to have a united front with the child so that they just feel like people are basically in agreement. Even if you're not, I mean, you don't have to air everything with the child. The other kind of conference you might have is where either the teachers called it or you've called it because you've got some real concerns. In that case, say you're going to be calling it, I would just give you this advice. Don't wait too long if there's an issue. Uh, but don't wait too long if there's an issue. Same thing. You remember the 3 Mile Island episode on Saturday Night Live years and years ago where the director's leaving for the weekend and he says, just remember, don't let the cord get too hot. And they have an argument. Does he mean too hot or not too hot? So anyway, same kind of thing. You don't necessarily want to jump on every issue and make a big federal case out of it right away, because sometimes issues go away by themselves, or you figure them out in a different way, or it's something that can be dealt with in a phone conversation with the teacher, and not let it blow up too much, but not make it seem like a bigger deal than it is. On the other hand, if there's something that's going on and you keep putting off saying something to the teacher and you're always hoping things will improve and it's not really improving, just know when to actually pick up the phone and schedule that conference. One of the things that teachers are always afraid of, especially as the year creeps towards its end, is that they'll hear about some kind of an issue that's been going on for a long time. There's been conflict with another student for a long time. Somebody's been, bullying or maybe just harassing somebody on a certain level forever. And you may not notice it. Believe it or not, you can be in class all day long with somebody, and you've always got your eyes out for stuff like that, but you really just might not notice it because some kids can be very crafty about how they do things. So not right away, but also not. You don't wait forever. Now, getting ready for the conference. I think it's important to know what the teacher's afraid of going into a conference, especially if you've called it. They're afraid of being judged by the parent. How good is this teacher? Is this a good teacher or not? And teachers put their all into what they're doing. They've really thought about it. They've been up late doing things. They've been up early doing things. They've lost sleep. It can be a crushing blow to some people to have a parent who shows that they don't have faith in them. So that's something I would just tiptoe around a lot and just know that that's there. You can get a lot out of reassuring the teacher that you think she's doing a great job, and have some specific thing that the student likes about the teacher. Uh, it can be a small thing, but just, have something if you can find something. Um, they're afraid that they might get second guessed by the teacher or by the parent. Are you teaching it right? Are you teaching the right stuff? Are you spending enough time? Do you call on people enough? Do you call on my child enough? What's your management really like? Because they're doing their best, and when people are saying, you could be doing it better, first of all, honestly, you might not know what you're talking about because of the situation. You don't know what's going on with all the other students in the classroom and everything else. And your perception of what's going on, it cannot logically be complete. So it really isn't a good idea to second guess, but it is a good idea if you have questions to ask a question. So, when you're doing math class, how does that run? And let the teacher just explain it. What happens when kids are raising their hands? How do you manage that? And then you might find that the perception's different. And honestly, sometimes teachers will kind of spruce up the way what they're really doing a little bit for the parent in the conference, and make it look a little better than it is. But that's human nature, and it's nothing to really worry about too much. But you might get a different idea about how things are going. They're afraid of those out of the blue things, like someone's been bullying him for the entire year. Something that you've never heard of. So you can always have a pre-message for the conference. Send an email and just say, well, we'd like to talk about her relationship with Emily. The teacher might be thinking, I had no idea that there was any relationship with Emily in any way, positive or negative. But they can mull it over and think about it, and not just suddenly have something that they just comes seemingly out of nowhere. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes a teacher won't be believed by the parent, and that's a tough situation. There's a breakdown of trust there somehow, and just try to avoid that, or at least looking like it. Now, getting ready for the conference is actually on that day. First of all, it really is important to be on time. Everybody's busy. Businesses are always busy. Everybody has a packed schedule. That's the way things go. I would think, I think at schools it's a little tougher to accommodate any changes, last minute changes. Having a conference during the day takes some planning. And if you're 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, it feels like you're sitting there for a century waiting for the parent to show up. So, you really want to be on time. It's just, for obvious reasons, but also for that. I think schools, it's that much harder to schedule things at a school. Everything's going minute by minute. I mean, 2 minutes was like gold. You could get all the way from your classroom to the art center in 2 minutes. So it's a different perception of time. It really is. If somebody has to wait for the copier for like more than a minute and a half, they're going to just leave. That kind of thing. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Your clothes, they ought to be kind of appropriate to the school. That's all I'm going to say about that. You don't want to overdress or underdress. Lean towards overdressing. Obviously you can't come in your slippers and stuff, but you don't want to look like it's too casual, because you do want to look like you're taking it seriously. So in my case, why do I wear a tie? After all, it's the internet. Who cares? When I first started tutoring, this was after teaching, what I would wear was what I considered to be, your typical tutoring outfit, which would be like khakis and some sort of a decent looking shirt. And with time, I started thinking, well, maybe I should wear better shoes, or maybe I should wear like a white or blue shirt like this. And then I would say, maybe I should just wear a jacket but no tie. Maybe I should wear a tie. And what I noticed is that every time I upped that to something a little more professional, I was better received by the parent. There was just no questioning that. If you show up casual, you will be treated casually. And if you show up, like looking like you're ready for the job, then you'll be treated like that. I wouldn't show up in a tuxedo, but this shows that you mean it to be there. It's a good thing. Also, you know what? I would leave the coffee at home, whatever the school is. I used to bring coffee to my tutoring meetings, and I eventually got rid of those. My headmaster, when I worked at my school, would always say, "No coffee. Don't be seen walking across the parking lot with a cup of coffee. Don't have a cup of coffee. It means you're not ready for the day." And some people would take great umbrage at that, and what do you mean, and all this. But it's one of those things. It's really true. You kind of getting rid of the coffee. It's hard to define, but getting rid of that cup of coffee just makes you look better as far as how seriously you're going to take stuff. And I know for my part, I'm always kind of worried that's going to get knocked over, of course. But that's probably just from working with children. But you think about it. There is something about it that's just not totally professional. You ought to know what you're there for. And what I mean is, if the teachers called the conference, you may or may not know much about it. But you ought to, if you have some ideas, just know that you've thought them through. You don't want to ramble too much and think it through in front of the teacher. Just try to cut it down. You can have a list. You can bring a list. Some teachers are a little intimidated by lists. Like they'll say, "Oh yeah, there's a big list of stuff." I wasn't. I think that's just somebody who wants to keep his thoughts organized and not forget anything. You can always call later, of course, but just you kind of have an agenda. Now, the other big thing about it is with a conference is who starts it. As in, generally there's going to be a teacher and an administrator there, or somebody else, unless it's a different situation where you're meeting in a classroom and there's another group over there. But they never, they never want to have people alone. Generally, they don't, and that's solely because that way later on, if there's a disagreement about what was said, then there was somebody else there to back you up. So hopefully that administrator is, for the teacher, the kind who knows that they're a witness and basically nothing else. And you may feel like you want to say something to the administrator first because they're the senior person, and okay. Hopefully they'll just say, well, let's just hand it off to the teacher. And hopefully the teacher will say, well, what do you think about everything? And let you talk first. I think that's, in my opinion, that's the best way to do it. Hopefully they will. If they don't, if they've called the conference and they've got something to talk about, then they'll talk about it and then you go from there. If it's one of these open-ended conferences and they want to start first, then you may have a few things that you want to say. And I would just in that case let them talk, okay? But it's a more dominant strategy if you're having a conversation. I don't believe in a dominant strategy when talking to a parent. You can control a conversation, but do you get anything out of the conversation? It's not a negotiation. You're not arguing over price or something. It's not a contract. So if they do that, then what I would do is I would write things down as I go so they know that you are listening. And then if you've got something that matches up with what they were talking about, talk about that. And then move on to the other things that you wanted to talk about. And then get to their things. That's a very general idea. Obviously, things don't always go as planned. But I would not miss the opportunity to say what you want to say just because the teacher starts. Because if you start responding to what the teacher's talking about, the conversation can get way off track. And then all of a sudden, in order to bring up your point, you kind of have to haul everything back in. And that can be a little awkward, and you may avoid that. And then you'll go home thinking that you still haven't gotten to talk about what you wanted to talk about. So, just do that. Get to what the teacher's saying. But that can honestly wait, They can call you anytime they want. And you can call them too. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Hopefully they'll let you talk first. Now, I think I've been talking for 15 minutes, so this is going to be like more than one part. So that's a, getting started, getting there, and we'll leave it at that for this one. And see you in a little bit.